Thanks a lot. My name is Eric Singler. I am the Managing Director of the BVA Family and the founder and CEO of BVA Nudge Consulting.
Good morning, everyone here with us in Europe and our colleagues and friends in Africa, and our good afternoon to all of our colleagues and clients over in Asia Pacific. My name is Ted Utoft. I'm the Global Chief Growth Officer at BVA Nudge Consulting and the CEO of our UK team. We are very excited to have you here with us at the Human Advantage Conference 2023. Just a few words from Eric and I before we get started with our opening keynote with Professor Dan Ariely.
Okay, we would like first not to say, "Are you in good shape?" like a TV show, but I would like to share some important words. First, I would like to congratulate all of you, all of us, to be here today. Why? Because you have decided to dedicate time to learn. And we know it is very challenging to make this type of decision for your long-term interest. In behavioral science, we are used to call this the present bias, and we are very focused on our short-term priorities, advantage, and here you have made a different decision. We know that you have a very busy life, a lot to do today, a lot of priorities. Maybe you have learned about problem yesterday evening and you are there. So I would like to say congrats to you to have decided to invest for the long-term interest, your long-term interest, and the long-term interest of your organization. Because we all know that learning is critical. We are convinced about this, but maybe some of you know Sheryl Sandberg. Sheryl Sandberg had held a lot of leading role in small companies like Google, like Facebook, like Meta. She's a feminist, she's an activist, she's an author, and what she say about learning is the ability to learn is the most important quality a leader can have. And we are all leaders in our life and in our job, as manager, as father, and so on and so on.
But first, we also just want to say thank you. We have a lot of really heavy-hitting academic speakers coming with us today, and we are really excited to share them with you. They're really at the cutting edge of the academic world of behavioral science, which is what gives us so much inspiration for the work that we do. And so we're really honored to have them here with us at the Human Advantage. But also, we have some of the top practitioners in the world, and we want to thank them for coming to be here to share some of their real case studies from the field, real business challenges, real societal challenges, with real consumers, real citizens, real employees. And we think that's what's so important about understanding the application of behavioral science. So a mix of the academic and the application.
We are also very grateful to our BVA family colleagues that will moderate the session throughout the day. And they are experts in topics and in sector which will help our guests to be at their top, to share with us their best insight and experience. For example, just to illustrate this, Adelaide Zulfikar-Pettit, who is there in English, it's more difficult than in French. In French, it's already very difficult, but in English, it was the first time, and so sorry, Adelaide. But I wanted to highlight that she will moderate the big debate on democracy later today. But at the same time, she would have been part of the roundtable as an expert who has written a book on the topic. So thanks to our BVA family friends.
We also want to give a special thanks. Someone sitting over there, lying in wait. We might call him the hardest working man in Hollywood. This is Adrien Liard. He's an amazing digital illustrator and one of our colleagues here at the BVA family. You may recognize him from last year. Throughout the day, Adrien is going to be doing sketch notes of each session. So bringing some kind of visual cues for you to remember about the sessions, remember the speakers, remember some of the key topics. So we'll check in with Adrien. He looks fine now. By the end of the day, he'll be a broken man. We'll have him working very hard, but we'll check in with him as the sketch notes come together throughout the event.
Ted, your first mistake. Where is
My
the
first
slide?
mistake. Here he is. Here he is.
So we would like also not to forget our communication team, the wonderful BVA Family communication team. I can tell you that they've made a huge work to create this event. Guys, you know I love you, and I am not alone, and thanks a lot for this huge effort.
And of course, we want to thank all of you. There's been an update since last night. We want to express a lot of gratitude to those of you who are here with us in person in Paris. I know it's a bit early, and some of you have logged in, and there'll be friends joining us in the Americas later this afternoon. But we're really proud to tell you that you are in good company. We have over 2,700 attendees already registered today from over 81 countries, excuse me. And so we are really happy to have you join us throughout this day. Now, we do want to just share a couple of words about the BVA family. To tell you a little bit about us, we're a global market research and consulting group with offices all over the world, as you can see. And I know our colleagues in Sydney and Singapore and Bangalore and Shanghai are watching already. The BVA family covers 3 core areas. Insights with our colleagues at BVA BDRC, BVA Doxa, BVA Excite here in France, and PRS and Vivo, who are a global leader in packaging, product, and shopper research in the fast-moving consumer goods sector. Our data colleagues at BVA Data Factory, and our consulting colleagues at BVA People Consulting, specialists in internal surveys and employee engagement, and BVA Nudge Consulting, experts in applying behavioral science, where you will find Eric, myself, and our colleagues at BVA Nudge Consulting. And as Eric mentioned, behavioral science really runs through the core of all that we do, but our colleagues are truly sector experts. We're not always consultants by training, we're not always researchers by training, but we have colleagues who come from the worlds of transport and mobility, pharma and healthcare, public policy, public services, banking and finance, etc. But behavioral science is really at the core of what we do. We are the pioneers and leaders in applied behavioral science, and we have a passion to better understand human behavior and to use this deep understanding in all that we do for our clients, from research design to execution to analysis to consulting and solutions. We are a group of, I believe it's a little more than 850 these days, 850 passionate people around the globe. As I mentioned, many of them are logged in today. And we're really excited to share our sector expertise paired with that human insight. BVA Family is a purpose-driven group. And that means if you're here in France, an entreprise à mission, a B Corp in the US, or a Benefita in Italy. And we have a mission, and that mission is to inform the decisions of people and organizations, to decipher their world, and support clients to build effective solutions contributing to a positive future. And it's really with that mission in mind, and because we have such a passion for the application of behavioral science, that we decided to create the Human Advantage last year. And because of the huge success of last year's event, I see a lot of familiar faces, and I saw a lot of familiar names registered to attend digitally. We decided to go for a second round. Maybe we're crazy, I don't know. But it feels like a lot less than a year ago. But we really believe in the power of applying behavioral science, not just to do better business for your organizations, but to truly make a better world. And it's with that in mind that we create this event with our very homegrown, very hardworking communications team, and we make this event free of charge to anyone who's interested in behavior change and who also has an internet connection, so that you can log in and be with us live. So, Eric, tell us where we're going.
It was a 5-minute advertising about the BVA family on maybe 11 hours of conference, so we hope it's not too much. So same days and last year, same conference room, same moderator, same passion for behavioral science, same wonderful British accent for myself. Last year, I've made a lot of progress, I know. Okay, so now it's time to talk about the program. It is a fantastic program. First half of this conference, we will have 4 different sessions, an opening keynote with the amazing Dana Ariely. After a wonderful other session on the key topics, employee engagement with Amy Edmondson that I will introduce later, and a roundtable. After 2 different sessions, one on another small topic, sustainability, and last one, a great topic and a core expertise of the BVA family with customer experience and 2 roundtable with concrete real-life case study with clients. So here it is for the first half of the day. Second half of today will be also, I think, very rich with 7 sessions, one with Julia Dar, leader of BSI at BCG, about transformation and the science of change, one with introduced with a keynote with Nir Eyal. I will tell you more about Nir later this afternoon, about new product and new service, with another great roundtable with experts from Reckitt, from Danone, from L'Oréal, a roundtable on patient experience on a very interesting topic. The big debate, I mentioned it at the beginning of this presentation, about democracy, misinformation, engagement, polarization. So I think maybe the most important social topic of the world right now with sustainability. Infusing behavioral science within organization, here again a roundtable to discuss how to successfully apply behavioral science within organization. Another important topic, artificial intelligence, with a keynote by Daron Acemoglu. I will introduce later Daron Acemoglu, who is absolutely amazing, and a roundtable with practitioners. And last but not least, our friend, Professor John List, who is the chief economist of Walmart after Lyft and after Uber, and he will make a closing keynote about his experience at Uber, Lyft, and Walmart to apply behavioral science. So start for the great day and some technical advice from my buddy.
So at the end of any of the live roundtables, there is time for questions and answers. So to ask a question, if you're here live with us in Paris, raise your hand and we'll come find you. If you're online, you can put those questions into the chat on the right-hand side of your screen, and our communications team will zap those questions to us here live. Finally, if you have any thoughts, anything you want to say, you can tweet or use the hashtag #TheHumanAdvantage. And I think it's time to begin. So we're going to start our opening keynote with Professor Dan Ariely. I think most of you are familiar with him, probably one of the most recognizable faces and names in the world of behavioral science. And we will be following up with a conversation we had with Dan about 1 month ago. So let's begin.
Welcome everyone to the beginning of a very exciting day here at the Human Advantage Conference. My name is Eric Singler, Managing Director of the BVA Family and founder of BVA Consulting. In a moment, I will pass the questioning to my colleague Ted Utoff. Ted is CEO of our UK team and our Global Chief Growth Officer at BVA Consulting. But first, I am very proud to introduce our opening keynote speaker for the Human Advantage 2023, Professor Dan Ariely. Dan is a James B. Duke Professor of Psychology and Behavioral Economics at Duke University. He is also a founding member of the Center for Advanced Insight and has been an instrumental player in the creation of a number of behavioral science consultancies as well as numerous companies from insurance to kitchen gadgets, from bathroom scales to time management apps. I think there are few places Dan can't find value in applying behavioral science. But I'm sure many of you first have known Dan from his writing. Not only did he pen a column for the Wall Street Journal for, I think, nearly 10 years, but Dan is the author of several best-selling books, including the famous, I would say, Predictably Rational, I think published in 2008, which was one of the first books to bring behavioral science to the mainstream discourse, and certainly the most important book with maybe Nudge, published the same year. He followed that up in 2010 with The Upside of Irrationality and 2012, The Honest Truth About Dishonesty. Dan has also recorded several TED Talks, fantastic TED Talks, each of which has garnered several million views. Dan, it's also a great personal pleasure to have you here today. I met you, I think, over 10 years ago at Duke University, and I must say, confess, it was a wow moment for me and a fabulous, from that time, source of inspiration. Since then, I have been very fortunate to regularly meet you and, of course, to read, watch all of your work. You was extremely kind to be the first guest of my podcast, the Be Good Podcast in 2020, and now you have graciously agreed to participate in the Human Advantage. So, big, huge thank you. Welcome, Dan. Thank you so much for being with us. And for our attendees, you can read a lot of these books, and including you could play also with Dan to better apply behavioral science.
So thank you for this very lovely introduction. I can't help but remember the last time we met face to face, that after we finished having a drink together, we walked around and all kinds of people who were COVID deniers started attacking me. And I told you at the time about my adventures, but I think it doesn't prepare one to see in reality like somebody attacked, not just online, but in reality with so much anger and so much hate. I would say that in general, I have lots of strange things happening to my life, but I try to make the most out of them. And as you know, my adventures with misbelievers and the questions about what happened during COVID and the nature of beliefs and so on became eventually a book where I try to understand the psychology of beliefs, but also the psychology that takes some people and then change them so that they trust less institution, they start trust less society, they develop alternative theories about what is happening. So hopefully something good would come out of those very troublesome years in that world.
So good to have you here, Dan. I'm going to quote you directly now, and not from one of your books, but from your LinkedIn profile, where you say, "I do research in behavioral economics and try to describe it in plain language. These findings have enriched my life, and my hope is that they will do the same for you." End quote. So 2 questions for you from the start. 1, in your plain language, make the case for applying behavioral science for a better world. And my second question is, since the publication of important books like yours in 2008 with Predictably Irrational, why do you think behavioral science has taken such hold, particularly in the private sector? So I'll start with those 2.
Okay, so let's start with the question of plain language. I think it's not so much about the plain language, use more less complex syntax. I think it's about helping people see the overlap between the kind of things we describe in social science and the kind of things that we're experiencing. So if you think about, let's say something like resilience, you can keep resilience at a high level and talk about resilience. You could also give an example, right? So you could say, here is what resilience is about. If you have a 4-year-old kid and you go with them to the playground and you send them and you say, go and swing. And the kid goes swinging and comes back 20 minutes later, you've been successful in creating a kid that has secure attachment. If you come with a kid and you say, go to the swings, and they go to the swings, but every 60 to 90 seconds they look around to see if you're still there, you have failed. Now, for me, this is about taking this concept secure attachment, which for me is a big part of resilience, and embedding it in something that creates a very clear connection with life. Now, it's not, after an example like this, it's hopefully not that you say, oh, it only works for 4-year-old kids and only in the playground, but you can envision the picture now, and you can envision the context, and you can say, okay, I can feel the kid, and I can feel the trust, and I can feel the lack of trust and the worry, and now you can start saying, okay, where else does it apply? So, the way that we think in general is with trying to understand the narrative of the situation that we're in, and if we have description that help us make the connection, we're more likely to do it. So that's what I mean, is to make the connection. As academics, we write papers, and we have sometimes a section that says applications, but those applications have a long distance between somebody who able to do it. And usually academics say, my job ends here, but there's a big gap that is left unattended. In terms of your second question, so I think I had a strange fortune that, good luck, that my book was published in the beginning of 2008, my first book, because that was the time of the financial crisis. And there were lots of things that were just very, very unclear about what was happening at that time and at that moment. And I think it was a time where people said, okay, maybe my worldview is not, it doesn't hold, and maybe it's time to look for something else. So I think it was a good timing. I think part of my success is due to this particular lack of. I didn't plan the financial crisis of 2008, but it ended up being good. But since then, I think a lot of businesses have started applying things. And as businesses have started applying things, they started seeing results, and they also started questioning some of their own assumptions. Because, if you're a business and you hear about somebody else experiment, it's not as convincing. But if you try something for yourself, and you discover that it's working in a different way, now you're saying, okay, where else would it fit? What other assumptions I'm doing in the way that is not perfect? But this is also, I think, a good place to think a bit more carefully about the difference between academic research and applied research. And when we do academic research, the main issue is novelty. The goal of academic research is to show a new nuance in our understanding of human behavior, let's say, or the human mind or something, right? It's all about innovation, something new, and it's about finding that something new in a very clear way. So you say, it's this and it's not this, and I know it and I have all the right conditions. On the other hand, applied research starts with the assumption of I want to make the biggest delta. I want to make the biggest impact. And there's a big difference. If I come to a new situation and I say I want to learn the next thing, I try to ignore. Actually, not try to ignore, but I look at the things that could teach me the most. If I try to make the biggest delta, I might take things that I know already. Right? In fact, I would do that. So if a financial institution, let's say, comes to me and they say, we want to get people to lead a better financial life. If I come as an academic, I say, I want to only study those things that nobody else has studied before. I want to study the novelty. If I come in an applied research, I say, let me take all the things that are true and tested already. I'm not looking for novelty, or it's not my main objective, novelty. I want to make the biggest impact. Let me take all the things that we already know. And because of that, in a strange way, as social science develops, it's harder and harder to create novelty, but it's easier and easier to do applied work. Why? Because when we come to do applied work, we also sometimes don't care too much about where the effect is coming from. So if we have 3 different ways to improve long-term financial savings, in an academic study, we would study all 3 of them with the control condition for all of them. We might not study them in combination and so on. In an applied setting, we say, I think all of these 3 methods work. I don't care which one works more or less. I want to make a biggest delta. Let me put all 3 of them together and then make a version of that with maybe a 4th one, yes or no. So we still do evaluate things experimentally. But I think this difference between innovation versus biggest impact, one factor at a time, multiple things at the same time, is a very important distinction. And that's why the application of social science are not just the continuation of a paper, because it's taking multiple papers and combining them in an interesting way and so on. So it's a whole new direction. And I have to say that I didn't recognize this in the beginning, right? When I started, I thought that the experiments that companies are doing would look more like the experiments that academics are doing, but they are not. But also because companies are doing these different experiments that include multiple things and take the things that are most likely to work and so on, the practice world is seeing very big effects because they are basically working on effect size, whereas academics are working on innovation, and that's a very different story.
Yeah. Well, linked to that, Dan, at BVA Edge Consulting, we find ourselves one day working with a utility provider, the next day, like you said, a global bank. One project's focused on healthcare, the next one, we're looking at behaviors in front of a supermarket shelf. Where would you say are the areas or sectors or domains, I don't know the word, but where you're seeing the impact of behavioral science in a big way, or seeing it in a way that's inspiring you?
So look, our main message is that it's very hard to change people, and it's much easier to change the environment. So now the question is, what environment do we have control over? So obviously, the one that has made the biggest change is the financial environment. Why? Because we moved to digital money. Imagine there was no digital money and everybody would use cash. It would be really, really hard to change that behavior, because how do you do something on somebody's wallet? How do you get somebody to reflect back? But the moment money moved to digital world, we have control. And by the way, some of the advances in crypto, especially the contracts, are creating even more flexibility. Just imagine one day a regular currency could have contracts, right? Like Ethereum is having now, when you can say this money is going to increase in value or decrease in value, or you could use it for this or you could use it for that, and that's all part of the smart contract. All of a sudden, behavior could be even more powerful. Like we can control more. So it's not about what behavior we can control or not, where we having which domain. It's about where is this domain going? Where is this domain going? And the more domain is going to a system that we can control, the better we could be. So take as an example the question of misinformation. When I started writing this book on this, I was hoping that I will have a final chapter that will have solutions. I ended the book with a section that I called "Hopefully Helpful." Right? I became much more pessimistic during this process. I actually now call this corrosive information, because I think that when you use the term disinformation or misinformation, it makes us feel that the remedy is easy. If you only show the true information, it will override it. But that's not the reality. Reality is that it's corrosive. Somebody who has been exposed to that information, it's going to be very hard to get them back. Right? There's a real loss that is not easy to repair. Now, if you gave me control over the social networks and over television stations and YouTube and so on, I think we could do much better. So, it's an area of life that we could do much better, but I just don't see a way to get control over it. But here is how I look at different areas of life. I look at different areas of life and I say, where are we and where do I think we could be? So think about the way we manage our money. We could do much better, we're not so good. How we sleep, how we take our medication, hate, misinformation, and so on. And then I ask the question, who has the tools to reduce that gap? Right? And is it in the hand of social scientists? So for example, when I look at, things that have to do with polluting the world, I think social scientists have a small role to play, but the biggest role is outside of our hands, right? Yes, we can get people to recycle more. Yes, we can get people to drive less, turn off lights. We can do all kinds of things, but the big stones need to come from somewhere else. So that I think is the issue: is to recognize big gaps and saying which one are doable from a social science perspective. And if they are, that's a good area for us to deal with. So I think there's as health is becoming more digital, there's a lot of opportunities there. I think in the financial world, of course, there's lots of opportunities. I think question of sleep, I think, is going to be difficult. Question of eating, we can make some progress. But anyway, that's the way I would look at it and see what we can do.
Okay. Dan, I hardly dare go there, but we're in 2023 and, there's been so much buzz about artificial intelligence broadly, and in particular, AI-generated chat bots, ChatGPT, Bard, et cetera. I'd like to get your perspective on these fast-developing tools in terms of how they may shape the future for businesses and behaviors, and perhaps more pointedly, how they may impact our understanding and application of behavioral science. And I know you've run a test on your own quotes recently, which maybe you want to bring to life for people.
Yeah, so I for about 10 years, for a little bit over 10 years, I had a column in the Wall Street Journal in which people asked me questions and I responded. And I recently did a competition between me and ChatGPT. So we took the same question, my previous answer, and ChatGPT, and then I asked people to say which one they like more and to guess which one is which. I still win, but this is ChatGPT 3.5. We'll see what happens when it gets to 4, and so on. So look, there's a lot of things that will change with this technology. I think programming will change, lawyers will change. I think people would have I think for most things it would be a co-pilot. I don't think it would replace humans, but I think it will be a co-pilot to help throughout. And I think for most things it will be quite good. That's lots of ways it could develop. But I'll tell you what I'm worried about and what I'm optimistic about. So the thing I'm worried about is, of course, the question of fake news, corrosive information. If you think about the possibility that there would be an individual tailored version of corrosive information for everybody, that's a very frightening system. Right? So imagine that I could analyze your weak points, kind of, in the same way that, a cookie. No, but in the same way that cookies are designed, or designed to hit the human preferences in a way that kind of fits our evolutionary routes, but not necessarily good for us now. If we could understand the psychology of somebody and have a filter that takes a particular piece of news and translate it in the most persuasive way for them, that's very promising for advertising, but very frightening if it's at the hand of people who are trying to spread corrosive information. So that's the place where I'm worried about. And of course, there's lots of ways that it would make lots of improvement, but I'll tell you one direction that I really like is that I think it would allow us to have multiple faces to the same information. So imagine the following. Imagine you go to a doctor and the doctor talks to you and so on, and there's a summary of that discussion. Now, that summary of the discussion was created probably for a legal reason, because they need to summarize that discussion. But okay, so it's there as a summary, but the doctor has different usages for it. For example, in your next meeting, they might want to remember the highlights. Do they need to read everything? No. But if you think about, we have this object called your last discussion, and then we have a view on that which says, here are the things you need to know for the next meeting. That's important. But even better, now think about the patient. The patient was in the meeting with the doctor. The patient probably remembers very little, right? It's a stressful situation, and people rarely remember what they talked about. And now there's a way to summarize that in a way that is good for the patient. And not only a way to summarize it, but there's a way to create an order of importance. And maybe there's a patient that is having a challenge with taking the medication. We could change the structure of that. So the idea for me, again, we said it in the frightening way, is that here's a piece of corrosive information that I could communicate to you in the most persuasive way. I think there's also amazing opportunities there, especially when you ask the question of, okay, here is some information that you need to act on. Let me create a lens that gives you a translation of that information in a way that is most likely to get you to take the action that we think you should be taking. And that, I think, is quite amazing, right? Because I think if something understood the nuances that gets us to be motivated, that would be amazing. And it's not just motivation. Again, when you look at patients, I can tell you about myself. I have days when I have more pain, and I have the days when I have less pain. On days where I have more pain, it would be great if the information was easier to digest. Like maybe an 8th grade reading version would have been better. So it's not just the patient holistically, but there are nuances and so on. So I think there's lots of opportunities there. There's lots of opportunities to mediate between, okay, here's the knowledge, here's the person in the context, and now let's create a translation layer. So I think that has huge potential.
Great. Dan, we have quite a diverse crowd who join us for the Human Advantage, based on last year's attendance, from marketing and insights professionals to human resources, from career starters to C-suite. It's a real mixed bag. So, as you well know, not every organization has a budget or a team for applying behavioral science yet. Let's hope that they will soon. How would you encourage them to make those early moves to incorporating applied behavioral science or applying behavioral science into their work if they're kind of a fan or a kind of an internal champion, but they don't have the structure or the budget per se just yet?
Yeah. So I think, first of all, there's kind of a couple of different approaches. So I'll give you two very different approaches that I like. The first one is simply to go through a process that helps people understand in their mind what is the potential for incorporating social science. And one of my favorite ways of doing this is to adopt the question, what if people don't know how to X? So imagine that we're trying to do a new bank. And you basically say, imagine you have a bank. You're a bank and you're saying, should I incorporate social science? And one exercise to do is to go and say, what if people didn't know how to manage their own money? What if people had systematic mistakes in managing money? Don't start by saying, here's your bank and here's little things you could change. Start by saying, what if we started from scratch? Only as a thought experiment, of course, we're not going to build this new bank. But we start saying, what if we thought that people don't know how to use their money to maximize their well-being? What if we don't think that people know how to manage their money so they don't fight with each other? What if we think that people don't know how to give allowances to their kids? You just start with kind of a basic set of questions. Then you can look at them and you can say, do I believe that this is indeed the case? And by the way, when I do this with people, they mostly said yes. I don't think people know how to manage their money. I don't think people know what vacation would get them the most happiness. I don't think people know how to manage their relationship. I don't think people are, but the moment, and that kind of gives you it's a thought experiment, but it gives you the scope of the possibilities. Because if you're in a domain and you say, no, I think people are exactly correct here and here and here and here, and I don't think there's anything to improve, because, if people don't make mistakes, then that domain, nobody needs us, right? The places that we can help is when people make mistakes and they don't have good intuitions about it. So the first thing that you can do is you can say, let me use this type of question. What if people don't know how to X? And let me at least come to a realization myself or in the organization of, are we dealing in a domain that we think people are experts on? Or are we dealing in a domain that we think people are not expert on, and there's a good chance that they're getting things wrong? So that's from a very that's one approach, right? You start from a very abstract way. It's a thought experiment. There's no data involved, and you're just thinking to yourself, do I you can use a different methodology, but do I think that is this a domain that people are experts and they know what they're doing, or they believe that there's people are not experts and they don't know what they're doing? And where does it fall? If you say, people make tiny mistakes, maybe don't worry. If you think, it could be that people make tremendous mistakes, that's kind of abstract, general, holistic for the whole business. The other possibility is to take a new project that is already happening anyway. Look, we know that organizations have a hard time doing anything new. It's just the nature of things, right? And a lot of social science is about friction and so on. So getting the advice of social science in a project that is just starting, it's the right time. If it's too late, it's too late. If there's no project, very hard to create something. But if you have something that you're about to get going, that's a really good time to try and incorporate the advice from social science. And I think it would kind of maximize value per cost, because you're taking something you're going to do anyway. You might do another version, or you might do some changes and so on. So maybe those are the three ways I would think about.
Great. So Dan, we've talked a little bit about misinformation, as you said, corrosive information. So you have a book coming out towards the end of the year, Misbelief, What Makes Rational People Believe Irrational Things. So we'll stay tuned to that. But a last cheeky question from me before I pass it back to Eric. Speaking of staying tuned, I've heard a bit of rumors that there might be an upcoming television show based on some of your evidence, some of your experience, called The Irrational, in the works at NBC in the US. Can you tell us more? Are you allowed to tell us more? And my bigger question, are you about to make behavioral science cool?
Well, I hope it will help make it. I hope it will make it cool. But this was one of the effects of COVID. Is I decided to look for new adventures, and one of them was to team up with some very good writers, and we wrote a pilot, and then NBC is doing now a series loosely based on my life. So the guy would also have scars. My research center is called the Center for Advanced Hindsight. His research center is called the Institute for Advanced Hindsight. But you'll see a lot of similarities. You also see some of my research, and it's been quite it's been quite wonderful, because I work with the writers, and we try to make the research in the series like real research. So, it's a TV and it's a TV drama, but we try to stay true to how universities work and how research works. So hopefully it will be successful.
Dan, thanks a lot. I would like to end with one last more personal question, and you mentioned this in your intro. I would like to share the memory of our last encounter in person. As you mentioned, it was in Tel Aviv last year. We had a great moment enjoying some beers, and I found you in the square surrounded by about maybe 20, 30 upset anti-vaccination people with whom you were debating. It has reminded me of the forums of ancient Rome where public matters were debated, even if in this case it was not a cool debate. Dan, why did you do that? And more generally, what is your mission, maybe in life, or what is the mission you assign yourself by doing this type of things?
So first of all, I did not seek that debate. I don't know if you remember, but I walked I walked through the square by mistake, and I all of a sudden I found myself, and they approached me and so on. It's not, but it's also not exactly true, because in the beginning when it happened, I did search them. Like when they started attacking me in the beginning, I did try to connect with them, because I had a very deep desire to understand them. And and after I failed miserably in trying to explain anything to them one by one, I went a little bit undercover. But for 2 years, I was spending a lot of time in the dens of corrosive information. So, again, if you think about, for me, maybe some of it was kind of therapy. I feel so attacked, death threats almost every day, and I wanted to gain some control by maybe studying that. By the way, which is what they do by inventing all kinds of things. But I think I had a desire. I felt that this was a tremendous force in the world, and that I'm in a privileged position to understand it and maybe shed some light to it, to maybe try and improve something. And in general, that's my drive. My drive is to basically see where I think that we could do better as individuals, society, and so on, and to try and study those things in order to propose solutions, not just to understand them, but to propose solutions. And that's true for everything I do. I do try to look at challenges that I think are big and substantial, and that we would be better off dealing with them, and to try and understand them, but not understand just for the understanding, but to propose some ways forward.
Thanks a lot for this amazing conversation, Dan. It is a gift to our audience. Thanks. It was wonderful.
Thanks again,
Thank you
Dan.
very much.
And to our attendees, stay logged in and tuned in. We are moving ahead into the first session for the Human Advantage 2023. We will see you there.